welcome to all of you that are on the line with Lyle Griffin and I. Before we get started, I do want to share some news that you might have seen and also share a special thank you for you. Steele Benefit Services was named one of the 25 fastest growing companies in Indianapolis this last week by the Indianapolis Business Journal. And so many of the people that were responsible for helping us do that, from the employer community, from the insurance carrier community, from the brokerage and advisory community, so many of you are on the line with us today. And so definitely want to take a moment and just say thank you. That definitely was a team honor, not only for our team, which certainly played a big part, but also for you that helped us do that as well. And you know, it was funny. We can kind of bring that into some of the history of how you and I started together. And by the way, welcome Lyle Griffin, president and founder of Selerix Systems. So as we get started today, just kind of telling a story. Steele started doing electronic benefit enrollment in 2007. And so for the first 7 years of our history, we did that on a platform other than Selerix. And 7 years in, we're still waiting for our first perfect enrollment. You know, we really loved the idea, but it just hadn't taken off quite like we wanted to see that. And so what happened was we started getting some pressure from some of the insurance carriers that we should get to know Selerix better. And then early in 2015, I don't know if you remember this, Lyle, but you and I, we met together and had a few drinks at a producer conference from a leading Selerix carrier. Yeah. And really, I was a fly on the wall. I was you and a firm called TBX, and you guys were expressing a deal of excitement over this new module that you had developed called the Affordable Care Act reporting module. I don't know if you remember that, Lyle, from 5 years ago. And it was funny just how that happened too, because I left that thinking we're going to go all in with Solaris. I was really impressed with the work that Lyle and his team had done putting this together and the platform. And so I left there. We came back to Indiana. I told the team we were going to Texas, and three of us came down there and we met with Ruthie Gray, which to do some training and learn how to build the platform. And for those of you that were with us last week, Ruthie certainly is fabulous and is a great talent at Selerix from a systems development standpoint, and a wonderful resource for the Selerix platform. And while I ran into you in the hall, it was funny, and I wasn't sure if you would even remember me at that time, you know, because we had just met a couple months prior. So
I remember you well. The thing I remember the most, Wes, is that when we first met, you had a very ambitious vision about growing what has been a family business in a particular direction. It was very technology focused, and I just want to say I'm proud to have been a partner in that.
I appreciate that. And, you know, here we are 5 years later, and, you know, I've got a group of employee customers that represents, you know, next year I expected to reach 100,000 people that were enrolling on your platform. And so it's been a fun ride through that time. And thank you for everything that you've done in the years from 2012 to present, I believe it was, to get us to where we're here on the line today.
Wow.
So for our guests on the line, I just want to share, I view Lyle as one of the truly visionary people in the benefits industry, and Lyle is viewed that way by his peers as well. And this is a great opportunity for us to get to know Lyle, and I just want to kind of pull the curtain back and let you know Selerix a little bit more, and kind of where that came from and the history and where it's going. And we may get into some, you know, benefit platform competencies and things like that. But more than anything, I just thought this is a great opportunity for our guests to get to know who it is that we're working with and who the development talent is behind the scenes at Solaris. And so, Lyle, if I might kick it off, maybe I could just ask you kind of, where did this all start? How did you get started with a career in technology?
Yeah, it all started with a little event you might remember called the .com bubble. I was actually working for, I had worked for two software companies that went out of business in 2001 as their funding dried up 9/11 happened. It was a very, very disruptive time in the industry. So Selerix is sort of a product of the .com bubble, in that a friend of mine and I, who worked together at SelectQuote in the Bay Area, got together and decided to form a company instead of getting real jobs. So I reached out to an old friend of mine, and who just, as luck would have it, was not very happy with the contractors he was using on this laptop enrollment system for the workplace benefits market. And he needed somebody to come in and build a web-based platform that could do the kinds of things that they were doing face-to-face. That company went out of business about 4 months after we took the contract with them, but we actually saw a lot of future and a lot of potential in the market, so we just kept right on going with it, and that's kind of how Selerix was born.
Was that the SelectQuote thing? Is that how you got involved and exposed to the insurance industry? How did that come about for the first time?
Yeah, that, and prior to moving to the Bay Area, I had taken a job as Chief Technology Officer for a small company up in New Jersey called Lifeweb, or Lifeweb, excuse me, not Lifemap. And they were basically developing an agency management system for life insurance sales. Prior to that, I had absolutely no knowledge or interest in insurance. All of my background had been in either language processing, graphics, or internet application development. So it was interesting. Did that for a while. SelectQuote actually tried to acquire the company that I was working for, and when that didn't work, they acquired me instead, and I just moved out to the other coast, and that's how I got going with this.
And in the application development area, you had some prior experience in that as well, right? Did you get your start there with Micrografx, or where did that come into play?
Yeah, my start, I guess you could say that. I mean, after graduating college, I moved down to the Dallas area to become one of the main technical contributors at this little startup in the Dallas area called Micrografx. I have the distinction of being the very first, or the author of the very first retail application for Microsoft Windows. And eventually was given received a Windows Pioneer Award from Bill Gates for having done that. But at the time, I was just a young kid graduating from school with a degree in computer science, and I could have gone to work for any number of big companies or go with this little startup down in Texas. So I did what any sensible person would do, which is go work for the startup.
And you've got really a portfolio of startups that you've worked for in your career. Did you always know that you would be kind of an entrepreneurial guy, that you wanted to be involved in the small startup scene and grow from there, or was that kind of by accident?
Yeah, I kind of think of entrepreneurs as congenitally unemployable. We don't really do well reporting to others and having to answer to others. So I guess that's probably one of the defining characteristics. I was an entrepreneur from way back. I owned my first business, which was a lobster fishing boat at the age of 14. Used to do that during the summers. My dad was a lobster fisherman, so I guess some people would accuse me of being a workaholic, but I've always found a lot of satisfaction from what I do for work.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I can relate to some of that, although the lobster fishing, I did not know that about you. That's pretty awesome. So with the Selerix founding, what was the original vision early in the Selerix days? How did that come about?
Yeah, the original vision behind Selerix was to create a web-based platform that handled all of the technical aspects of enrollment and managing benefits. And the key thing for us, a key design point for us, was it had to be able to handle the most complex kinds of benefit types. The types of things that Pasha, the other co-founder, and I were used to working with at SelectQuote were individual life insurance, things that are regulated at the state level and have very complex rating, underwriting, compliance requirements. So that was kind of the focus that we brought into it. Enrolling medical plans and group insurance. That was kind of the easy stuff. But what we were mainly doing was putting a platform in place that took care of all of this icky IT stuff that brokers and agents don't want to have to worry about.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think a lot of our guests on the line would be surprised to hear that the medical insurance is the easy stuff from a build perspective. What is it about a critical illness plan or an accident plan or something like that that is more difficult to administer than a health plan or a dental plan?
Wow, I could go on that subject for a while, but the big difference is a lot of these products are actually much more complicated. There are a lot more moving parts than you would have in a typical group rated plan. So structurally, if you look at a lot of these products, take critical illness. You may have 14, 15 different riders that are available. Some of them can actually be added by the individual when they're enrolling. Others are kind of baked in when the group decides what to offer. There are forms that have to be presented, disclosures and documents, underwriting questions that have to be asked, and those questions can vary from state to state because the insurance industry in our country is actually regulated at the state level, and those insurance commissioners basically weigh in with what they think the specific wording has to be in their state. So it's a very complicated business.
And as I'm listening to you talk about that, I can't help but think that, let's just say from 2015 to present or 2013 to present, there's been a lot of entrance into this area and people that do this type of work. How do you even get started in that? Like, how are other companies dealing with that?
There's a real wave in the industry right now toward simplification. Everybody wants all of their benefits to be as simple from a billing standpoint, from an underwriting standpoint, management standpoint, as their medical plan. So there's been a real push. You look at a lot of the newer entrants in this market. They've been pushing really hard toward changing the business to match the technology versus having the technology that really accommodates the complexity. So I don't really, to some extent, I think a lot of this has been a refreshing change. I think it's a change that has needed to happen, and I expect more of it to happen. I expect these products over time to become more, easier to manage, easier to bill. But in the meantime, it's a very diverse market.
That's really interesting. And Selerix, maybe is different than a lot of platforms in that, as opposed to a direct-to-consumer, direct-to-employer type model, you have chosen to go to the carriers first with a licensing model. And is that something that you always knew that you would do, or how did that licensing model come about?
Well, I would love to say that that was just a genius strategy. Looking back now over 18 nearly 18 years of operations, it seems like this was a really good, sound strategy, and it stood the test of time. I mean, our average growth rate over those years has been 33%, and it's actually been a good engine for growth. But like a lot of things, when you're an entrepreneur growing a bootstrapped business, a lot of this stuff sort of came out of necessity and opportunity. The opportunity for that first carrier license happened back in 2005, after we'd been in the business for 2.5, 3 years. We were starting to get a good reputation with agents that this stuff really worked. This platform really worked, and we were fortunate that Aflac at the time was looking for a system to do what we were doing, to replace something that they had earlier. They became our first carrier licensee in 2005, and then in 2007, 2 years later, was really what I would consider the turning point for our company. That was when Allstate, our second Fortune 500 company, made the decision to license the system from us. And at the time, we were just literally a 3-person company. Just 3 guys working out of their homes with some servers parked in a data center somewhere.
So our guests that are on the line, we talk a lot about how this benefits the employer and the employee, but every great once in a while, we'll get a question of, well, how does this benefit the carrier? Why does the carrier care about that? When a school corporation or a county government or a manufacturer, when they hire Steele and we administer their benefits, why does the carrier care about that?
I think the biggest, from a carrier standpoint, these carriers have products that really are valuable to people. I mean, there's a good reason to be offering them. They really round out. If you look at some of the ways that medical coverage has evolved and changed over the last 10, 20 years, the need, this move toward consumer-directed plans has really put more responsibility on the part of the consumer, on the part of the employee, and actually adding these ancillary products is really important. So from a standpoint of the carrier, the biggest benefit to them is we just kind of put them all together. It's one coherent benefit offering to the employee, and from that, the carriers really saw a much more efficient marketing model. You spend a few dollars to streamline the whole process of enrolling the benefits, managing the benefits, and you actually get higher participation rates in those voluntary plans. So, today we have, I think it's 25 major carrier licensees of the system, and really consistently, this is the main reason that they license the system from us, is that they're able to provide this service to the agents and brokers that they work with, who can then provide it to employers to really streamline the enrollment and management of all their benefits.
When you got started down this path, did you ever envision that you would have tens of thousands of employers and, approaching, getting close to 10 million employee lives on the platform? Did you see it go in that direction?
I can take kind of an aw shucks attitude about a lot a lot of things, but this is one that we actually did envision from very early on. Part of that strategy of doing the carrier licenses was a deliberate approach to build a large user base, to gain a lot of market share and gain a big footprint with the system, even though maybe we weren't charging anywhere near what some of our competitors would charge for a comparable platform. The goal was to build a massive user base and then to figure out over time how we can leverage that user base as an engine to grow the company.
When you talk about affordable pricing, one of the things that stands out to me about Selerix is it does administer complex plans. It does have affordable pricing, but then also, privately owned. So many of the platforms now are owned by private equity or carriers or very large consulting and brokerage agencies. How have you been able to survive in a world where there are hundreds of millions of dollars out there that are being developed into platforms like this?
Yeah. I was talking with our CFO about this a month or two ago, and it's funny. We probably have, on average, 4 or 5 private equity funds or investment bankers contacting the company, new ones wanting to acquire us or invest in us or whatever. And we've been fortunate that we haven't had to do that, and it's been at the point where the business model it became apparent that there was something really valuable here. The more we grew, the less we needed it. At some point in our future, there probably will be some investment in the company from the outside. Where we fully anticipate that, but it's actually been kind of refreshing to be our own dogs and make the investments we feel need to be made instead of having to answer to venture capital funds or private equity folks. So.
Speaking of investments that need to be made, so controlling the amount of personal data, social security numbers, health information that crosses through your platform, how important is data security and information protection to Selerix, and how do you guys approach that internally, just philosophically?
We are probably more paranoid about this stuff than any company you're going to find. It's we've really built the system from the ground up to protect people's data. One of the things that's different from Selerix than a lot of companies is that we intentionally will not host certain things in the cloud. Today it's very easy for us to go contract with companies, cloud providers, to basically rent infrastructure and put everything in the cloud. We basically do that only for things that don't involve people's personal information. So we'll use it to decentralize the delivery of content to people, but when it comes to managing their personal information, all of that lives on servers that we own that are actually in data centers, and they're completely under our management, so that we can work. But we call it the approach is called defense in depth, and there are many different layers of security built into this. Everything from encryption at rest to different firewalls and intrusion detection and all of those things. But as a company, you have to take this seriously, and you can't just rent it out. You can't just assume that whoever you're contracting to knows how to do this stuff.
In a world where there's a lot of entrants and a lot of people doing this, you had mentioned that when you received your second license, that was a big turning point of the company. Was there a point in recent memory in the past, 5-7 years, where was there an inflection point where you realized, hey, we really have a chance to be a winner in this? This is where we really have one of the great solutions out there.
Yeah, the first one really, the first time that happened really was with Allstate, and I have a tremendous debt of gratitude with them for this. This is a Fortune 500 company licensing from a 3-person shop, and then immediately going on an 82-city tour where they told people about this wonderful system that they had just licensed. And I'm proud to say, we were a catalyst in helping them kind of get to the next stage and really transform their business early on. But I think it said a lot about going the way we did, bootstrapping it. We really had to be very serious about making every person's experience with the system a win. Being completely devoted to making sure that the people who work with us have successful engagements, and that we'll do whatever we need to do to make sure that those things are successful.
We had Ruthie Gray on the program last week, who, for those of you that on the line that may not know, is the Vice President of Product Management at Solaris. And Ruthie had mentioned that she was a stay-at-home mom for 10 years before she came to work for you, and now runs product management. And I'm just curious, I see this some from the Steele side, where you don't just come work at Steele and know how to build a case or know about benefits. It's a long time frame where it takes to really get your folks trained and knowing what's going on, and you got to develop your talent. And I'm imagining on your side that's even more pronounced, where you're actually developing the software. And so what is your people development strategy like at Solaris? And how important is your team as you've gone down this growth pattern that you're on over the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, it's always been very important. When you're really small, today we're a little over 100 employees in the company. Back in the days when we were a much smaller company, under 30, it's really challenging to attract good seasoned talent. People who have been who are kind of peaking in their careers. Who's going to take a chance on a small company? You don't really have any assurances that the company is going to be successful over time. So it's a real challenge. The best thing, what we found over time, is that we had to do our best to recruit the best people. But then once you have those people, make sure they have opportunities to grow. Make sure they have opportunities to develop, to help push the company. And a lot of that comes from spotting people with that entrepreneurial drive. Ruthie's move into management really happened as a as a solution consultant or a client advocate on our team, somebody building groups and doing that. She came forward and said, hey, we would really benefit from having training. What I want to do, here's my proposal. I want to go run training. And in my mind, I'm looking across the table and say, okay, you may want to go run training. Where I think you're ultimately going to go is you're going to be basically running our product management. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a quid pro quo. I said, well, we'll give you training, but I need you to take on this role in product management. And the thing that what really gratifies me right now is to be able to have a company that can attract and retain and motivate people with that kind of talent. I love that. I love being in business and providing an engine where people can thrive and have challenges to conquer and all of that. So
That's fantastic, and that shows, by the way. I think, Lyle, you can definitely see that interacting with you even for a short time. Selerix has developed a new program called Engage that we have been talking about at Steele, starting to share with our customers and talking about the value of employee engagement and tools to help engage employees and communicate with them in a way of building the team spirit and communication that goes beyond benefits communication as well. And I wonder if you would maybe just talk a little bit about how is Selerix using Engage internally for your own employees?
Yeah, so we have several ways. I mean, it's hard to talk about this stuff today without bringing up COVID-19, right? When we've got this pandemic, all of our employees right now are working out of their homes. Each one of us, I think, is feeling very isolated and detached from the rest of the team. This is one of the things that is part of Steve's responsibility, our VP of marketing. It's not just marketing to the rest of the world, it's marketing internally and making sure that their employees have a significant contribution to the brand, but also a sense of being a part of this, that sense of community. So we have several things that we're doing with Engage. One of them is that we've actually implemented a systematic wellness campaign. It actually will go on throughout the year, educating people about the benefits that we're providing, and using that as a way to qualify for reduction in their health premiums. So we have several tracks that we have with Engage. That the wellness track is one. Another is getting to know the rest of the team. We do profiles of our employees. The latest one actually, as luck would have it, is based in Indiana, and it's kind of cool. He's up there working, but it was just a chance for the team to really get to know him, and it's just a lot of fun. So that's another area, and then of course the other piece is just making sure that we're in touch with our employees, that they're having a chance to influence what the leadership team is doing and really kind of drive where we're going.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of where we're going, there's a lot to be excited about in benefits engagement, benefits enrollment, benefits administration, and technology efficiencies. What are some things that makes you excited about the future, just kind of knowing what's coming?
I think there are a lot of things going on right now that over time are going to be very, very influential. I think this new emphasis on employee engagement is certainly one, helping companies be more strategic about recruiting, motivating, educating, and building a sense of brand and community within their companies. That's a really important thing. Another important thing that's going on, and this is really across the industry right now, at the risk of going off in a very technical direction, is the emergence of API integration, where where we can get to the point where these machines, these systems, just simply talk to each other instead of having to do EDI files and sending data back and forth occasionally better, if we're moving toward a world where our systems just simply stay in sync. And then the other aspect of that is in being able to take this solution and have it coexist in with a lot of different human capital systems, being able to interoperate with EAP systems, human capital systems, payroll systems. Those are we consider that a really important aspect of what is what's going on in the future.
Ruthie talked a little bit about that last week as well, and there's hardly a week that goes by out here in the field at Steele where we don't have discussions about how data moves back and forth. And so without question, that's an exciting prospect when we think about making it easier for information to come out of Selerix and into other systems, and vice versa, for information to come out of payroll or carrier systems and populate and be a more real-time, seamless solution. So,
another aspect of that, a few years ago, this is going back about 2.5 years, was dragged kicking and screaming into a standardization effort in the worksite benefits business, and I've been part of the group of carriers and tech partners who've been collaborating on a new data exchange standard for the industry that's being sponsored by LIMRA. LIMRA is a trade organization that is mainly driven by insurance carriers. This is the way that they collaborate and kind of keep in touch with what's going on in the business. And these data exchange standards, I think, are going to go a long way toward realizing that vision of this connected world where these systems just talk to each other.
I think that's kind of a interesting thing as an outsider. So out here in the field, I might have a finalist presentation with one of our groups that are on the line here, and their other two finalists may be other big platforms, but you're working in the same room with those guys, trying to standardize the way data moves back and forth, just to the kind of the rising tide raise all boats mentality, which is pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, I guess it can be a little counterintuitive at times. I think the Japanese started calling it co-opetition a long time ago. It's where these companies cooperate, but they're still competing with each other. I've actually found it a very interesting effort. It's been kind of fun meeting these folks.
Yeah, that's great. On the competition front, so one of the things that we see out here day to day as we meet with employers is there are a lot of HCM type systems that do lots of different things, and benefits enrollment might be one of those. In a world where systems are doing more stuff, how does a specialized system like Selerix survive?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is flexibility, capability. Being able to embrace the complexity. That's really always been our mentality. That these things don't become complex because people want them to be. They become complex because employers are dealing with real issues. I mean, if you look over the last 20 years, how much faster the cost of medical benefits has accelerated, beyond just normal inflation. Employers for years have been dealing with this problem of having to deal with those escalating costs. So, I mean, we've seen everything from a wellness plan or a medical plan where the rating structure imposes a $15 a week surcharge for each stepchild on the plan. These plans become self-funded, and the employers employers are just trying to put sensible controls in place to get to get that spending under control. So a big part of how a company like Selerix survives in this is to be able to respond, to be able to implement these complex scenarios easily. We do this kind of stuff for breakfast, and you have to build your system to be able to handle that kind of complexity.
So with those HCM systems, I know you want to create the API integrations with them as well, so you're seamlessly moving information back and forth. Are you finding that the platforms are willing to play ball and work with you in creating those integrations? Yeah, more and more. We're finding that they're very receptive to this. This technology of being able to provide application programming interfaces, APIs that allow for this type of integration, it's becoming much more the norm than the exception. So, if you take, your typical HCM company is dealing with everything from recruiting and talent management to time tracking, payroll, all of those things. And then benefits to them is one little box that they're having to deal with. And, most of these companies have a very simplistic view of what benefits are. They're what drives those payroll slots. And when you dig down into it, you don't realize until you dig down into it, you don't realize just how complex this stuff is for very good reasons. It's complex because it has to be, and you have to have a system that's capable of dealing with it. I've got two questions left, and you may well have already answered them. We talked about engagement and we talked about integrations. And my last two questions have to do with just generally, what does the future look like? And so I think we'll start with just industry-wide. When we look at Selerix, platforms like Solaris, benefits technology, other technology that employers might have, what does the future look like over the next few years for employers? I think the future ends up being a much more integrated world. This is one where we view this as something we have to do for our survival. If we can't integrate, if we can't interoperate with other systems, then we're not going to be a credible alternative for people. So I see more and more that these platforms, they don't have to be everything to all people. I think our VP of Sales calls us the unicorn, the all-in-one HCM solution that does everything really well. There really, at the end of the day, is no substitute for having great point solutions in the areas that are really important to your company. So when it comes to managing benefits, our goal is to be the best platform to do that. And we work every day to make sure that we're going to be positioned as that company that can be more responsive, more capable, and more able to deal with the kinds of complexities that you see in the real world. And we're not just some module that you install in your HCM system. That's awesome. And I think, it's funny as you talk about being more responsive, and I think that's one of the things that has caused Steele and Solaris to work so well together, is responsive is actually a core value of ours. And I just couldn't agree with you more that in benefits departments, things are needed every day. And when we can help people solve issues, move forward, do things better, quickly and responsibly, it just is a beautiful thing. And so Lyle, you really have answered this a little bit already, but I've got one closing question here. And we've talked about how benefits technology is going to change, and there's a lot of integration functions. And I know you've said that that is a key thing at Selerix is being able to meet that integration challenge. Looking forward the next 3 to 5 years, how do you, whether it be structurally, services, whatever you think might be important, how do you anticipate Selerix changing over the next medium term?
Yeah, we'll continue. We'll continue to grow and continue to add new offerings that make sense. I don't see us ever not being focused like a laser beam on the benefits business. I don't really have an ambition to create an all-encompassing human capital system because that's really not. We don't really bring that kind of expertise to the table. So I see us continuing to be really focused on benefits and focused on providing a product offering that's really valuable to our customers. So the most important things that you'll look for from us is that we'll continue to be very responsive, very capable, so that when you present us with hard problems, we'll present solutions to that, and one that fits in your ecosystem. So those are really our ambitions.
I love hearing you talk about that, and that's just another area where I see alignment with your organization and ours, and it's part of, and that alignment is part of the reason we've been able to have the high customer success satisfaction that we've had. You used the words laser focused on benefits, and I think that's fantastic. And in the article that the IBGA just wrote about Steele, they used the words unwavering. And 20 years ago, we said we were going to put the employee first. And today our purpose is to create a prosperous workforce, and that's kind of the same thing for 20 years. And so we just so appreciate working with you and your team, Lyle. You're laser focused on benefits. We're laser focused on doing something good for the employee. And I think together we've been able to bring a lot of value to the people that are on the line. And your perspective today has been great. It's been wonderful to hear from you. So thank you so much for joining us with the Steele Learning Series. Thank you, Lyle, and thank you to our guests as well.
Thank you, Russ.
Take care, everybody. Have a great Wednesday.